Hi, Wamita. Welcome
Hi.
to the Awaken Your Wise Woman podcast. I so appreciate your being a guest.
Oh, thank you for having me, Biz. As I mentioned, I have my tissue, so if I go there in this interview, please bear with me.
Oh, yeah. Well, we will hold that space if that's where it goes. Um, but I would love for listeners to know a little bit more about you. So if you could share some of your story, I would fully appreciate that.
Oh, I'm happy to. I am the founder and chief storyteller of Career Safari, which is a place where I spotlight celebrate and support, I would say, the unique career journeys of women from around the world, namely through our podcast called Career Safari, but in many other ways that we can talk about. And I would say before I started Career Safari professionally, I worked many, many years in the non for profit sector or the NGO sector, as some people call it, depending on where you are in the world. And I served in many different functions. I worked with high net worth donors to help them to bring in money for great causes. I was implementing ideas and starting new nonprofits in different parts of the world. So I really had a diverse experience there. And then I moved into the tech industry because I just loved how disruptive the startup tech world was and still is. And in that space, I work directly with large customers to manage what we call like the customer life cycle. Um, that's like involving training customers on software to renewing contracts to being a consulting partner. And I love doing that work too. So I feel I've been very fortunate in my career to find things that I love, and over time and effort, spending time in those spaces. But I would say, like in the words of someone who I respect so much, Dr. Sarah Beth Burke, I am the quintessential hybrid professional. I have a lot of different professional identities given my background, and I'm constantly bringing all those things to Career Safari because I would say at the core of me, I am inspired by women and people in general who take risk on themselves. So I that is a little bit about me.
Nice, nice. And if there were something that felt relevant that like inspires you in your life, like what would that be?
Oh, it's definitely the stories of people and specifically women. So the reason why I started Career Safari is when I was in the NGO side of my career, I was meeting women who were starting their own nonprofits, who are running daycare centers out of their houses in small communities, to women who were government ministers and CEOs. And I was at a crossroad, and it was their stories that really motivated me to think differently about how I approach my career. And it's something that still jazzes me. It's something that, I can pick a nugget out of all of the people I've interviewed. And I can remember, oh, this person taught me this person taught me that. But, and a big reason why I love what you're doing as well, Biz, and just the title of your podcast is that I get energized and inspired by any woman or person in general who takes a moment to bet on themselves, who takes a
Mm.
chance on aligning their purpose and their gifts. And perhaps in many situations, that is a risk. But when a woman, especially, like awakens to like their inner self and you see it like being displayed in this world, nothing like give me more of that. Nothing makes me more excited and inspired than those type of stories and those type of people.
Oh my gosh. I feel like you're speaking from my heart. Just
No good.
like the I think for me the gift of podcasting, of course, I hope that it's reaching lots of people across the world, but for me personally, it's hearing their stories, of struggle and growth and transformation. And I feel like every conversation I have just leaves me with something new.
Yeah. I mean, I think I started Career Safari to help other people, but it's one of those like tried and true things. I'm being helped along the way. I'm being called to be my better self as I talk to more women and as the podcast and really the media company grows.
Nice, nice. And what what pushed you to the point where you walked away from a more traditional career, maybe life? I don't know that much about what your personal life is like, but what, yeah, what prompted this, what feels like a pretty big shift from something that's more known to creating this new thing?
It was a lot of different things, and when people ask, I start at different places, but I think like given your purpose and your audience, I will start here. There was a desire that like dropped in me, and I don't know when or where, but or no, I know where, but I don't know. I know when it happened, but I don't know how it happened. But to do something beyond a big brand. While I've been able to work with companies that I admire and large companies, I just didn't want to spend my life devoting my energy to executing on someone else's vision and mission for themselves.
Mm,
I just didn't want to, but I didn't know what that would look like. So I would say I remember that happening and that switch turning on for me. And I was dating somebody maybe a year or so later, and he's an entrepreneur. And he knew I was bringing in a lot of money in fundraising. And he just asked, "Why aren't you doing more of this for yourself?"
mm,
And again, the desire came back into me. And I'm like, I can't do anything by myself. I know that's too much work. That's just not me. And then really, and again, years have progressed, but these things are kind of just like piling on. And what really happened is that I was really frustrated at work at a time. I poured a lot of myself into what I believe was doing great and doing good stuff in the world. I still do believe I was,
mhm,
but I was hitting a wall in terms of like my creativity.
mm,
And there was this desire that was building inside of me to use my skills and my creativity differently. And I knew that the organization and the team I was under just would not accept me being different. They really had me typecast in a certain type of role. Um, and then that frustration led to me questioning what career success meant to me. And then that goes back to the conversations that I was having with women while I was traveling for work. And I just really love those stories and I wanted to bring them out there, but it was very out of nowhere. Like people did not expect this of me. And for many
mm,
months, maybe over a year, I hid that I was doing Career Safari because I did not want it to affect my time at the company and I didn't want it to face some sort of retaliation
right.
for pursuing it. And even though I had people that knew, I did not speak about it publicly for a while. And I knew that whatever place that I landed at next, because it wasn't at a point where I could like live on my own and just focus on that, they had to respect that I was doing Career Safari, which is why going into the tech space honestly helped me. I love
Mm,
tech, but they appreciate entrepreneurship a lot differently than I think older companies. So I could speak about it quite publicly. And, right now I'm in the position where I can spend some time away from a full time gig at a company to continue to develop it. But I also know if there's a time and place where financially I need to go back to it, I will. And I'm not ashamed of that. So I don't want to give people the impression like, it was one thing and it was done, but it was a lot of little moments that led me to be able to be more bold about talking about Career Safari and actually being what I want and being the Career Safari founder. It was just a lot of little moments.
mm. Well, and it's interesting because I feel like for probably for everybody, right? Growth is those incremental moments of like realization and then implementation, but just within ourselves, like it's not you wake up one day and suddenly like I'm going to go, for most of us anyway, I'm going to rearrange my life and do all these different things. It's yeah, having the opportunity, but the space internally to make those changes, but create and yeah. And what has helped you along the way to build this new, I love the name, by the way, Career Safari, because, you know, our careers can be like a safari,
It
right?
sure is. It sure is.
um, yeah, what has helped and supported you along the way to make, you said changing jobs was one, but what else have you done to support yourself?
Yeah, I think, not I think, I know. I mean, Career Safari, a big portion of that is I want women to have a healthier relationship with their career.
Mm,
And that starts with me. So my relationship with my career had to change.
mm,
And, I was in my 20s when I was 20s and at least 30s, doing all this traveling. I was, my body got hurt a little bit along the way flying in those coach seats. It was a nonprofit. Personal relationships got affected some.
sure.
And while I don't regret it, because I'm happy some of these things I learned when I was younger, um, in going to therapy and reflecting on my career, when I realized I just did not want my career to be the center of my life. So even though like Career Safari is something that I still do, I'm still a very ambitious person. I do not approach any role the same way. It
Mm,
starts with like, what do I want out of my life? And then how can this role, how can this opportunity help me get there? So if I want, more quality time with my family, and if this a position or opportunity is requiring me to travel 90% of the time, it's not the right opportunity for me.
mm,
Um, and there's also something in there about my self-worth changing. And I didn't even realize how much of it was tied into my career until a moment when my brother was getting married, and my sister-in-law, they're wonderful people. I was in their bridal party, but she put in her wedding website a little blurb about each bridesmaid, and I'm the only bridesmaid that had something related to their career in there. And it took me back because I'm like, this is my family. I don't want my family to see me in that light, and how
mm,
much of my life has been about like what I do. And I remember that moment thinking, oh, something has to change.
mm.
I can't eventually be like the sister-in-law, the auntie that's crazy devoted to work. So I didn't realize this was happening, but I knew I needed to take some time and really make my life the center of my life and not my career.
Wow. That's funny, just you saying that, like, so often for myself, like, if someone's like, "Tell me about you," it's yeah, I'm a therapist, I'm a life coach, it's like the job becomes sort of the way we describe ourselves
Yeah.
versus, like, I'm a mom, yeah, right, I have a great relationship with my husband, I enjoy traveling, and I'm a therapist and all of these other things.
Yeah. Or even
Yeah.
it's about not necessarily like your title, but like things that you enjoy. I love talking to people. I love
Yes.
discovering women's journeys. I love going to a good cafe. I mean, now I feel like I'm putting up a dating profile, but you know what I mean?
But it's true though, like those pieces of the job potentially that do fulfill you versus like the title. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That feels really important. Um, just interesting to me too that your um journey to found Career Safari feels, I guess when I started my journey, it was to help, like with the podcast, was to help others. Like, oh, if I can, podcast really started as like anxiety help, like how
Mm.
it was called Woman Warriors, and like, how can I help other women better understand and normalize their anxiety? Because we have a lot of good reasons to be anxious in the world. Um, but it became so much more than that, that it became like, I just want to, yeah, I want to be listening and hearing these amazing stories, which just, yeah, it's just, and I want to share them. I want others
Yeah.
to hear them too. So I just love that your podcast is different direction, but a beautiful representation of the women out there doing all this amazing stuff.
Yeah. I mean, when I, Career Safari started off as a blog on
Mm,
Medium.
okay.
And then in 2017, 2018, and then it transitioned into a podcast in 2021.
Mm,
And there are strategic reasons behind that. But even now, it's evolving into different types of media. And like I have dreams for it of one day doing like a documentary and things like that. But like the core of why I love doing it, similar to you, is since I was coming back home and telling all my friends about some of the wonderful women that I've met, I'm like, why aren't these stories known? Like, I need inspiration. Where are these stories at? And I tried
right.
to find so many different ways of like trying to like partner with someone to do it. And it just finally came to no, you can create your own platform. You can do it yourself. And on the days where I'm like, I don't have the energy for it, it's their stories. Like, I'm like, no, but I want to share Dr.
Mm,
Christine's story. No, I want to share these stories. And that's what still encourages me to this day.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Because it's not, it's a lot of work. The podcast is not something that is to be taken lightly in
No.
terms of, depending on how much support you have, like Oprah, I'm sure she shows up and there's the mic. But,
Hmm.
for me, yeah, there's a lot of behind the scenes and yeah, a lot of energy that goes into it. But it really, yes, the stories, the conversations are so sustaining and uplifting and yeah, pretty great. Mm. So how has this um, new path for you, how has it supported your journey to really put life first and make your life the most important part of what you do in the world?
Oh man, I one of the there's many unintended benefits of doing this is that a main one for me has been it has unlocked a level of freedom that
Mm.
I didn't know I needed in my career. Uh, to me, it still like tickles me that some people only know me because of Career Safari.
Wow. Yeah.
And that I've built this like community and this network because of Career Safari, that I'm invited to speak at companies because of Career Safari. It's just wild to me. And I'm like, when the heck did this happen?
That is so cool.
Like, when the heck did this happen? Like, you want to speak to me? Why?
Yeah.
Because it's just it's this freedom and this independence that I knew I needed because like I said earlier, the creativity I was craving, that creative outlet I was craving just did not exist in the confines of the organization that I was in, or at least that role. But that I was able to actually obtain it, and that it's being sustained now for what, 4 or 5 years, 5 years at this point, is just insane to me. And what I gained is that I don't need anyone else to define who I am.
Mm.
I have the tools, I have the capabilities to figure things out on my own outside of a corporate structure. And I'm not here to bash companies. I'll still work at a company. Um, but it's also a skill set you take in if you do decide to go to a company and they want you to like completely revamp their division or something like that. But
Hmm.
I don't know, coming from the NGO background, and anyone who's attracted to helping people. And that could be as a therapist, that could be as a nurse, that could be as a whatever. But even in the NGO world, you're attracted to it because you're empathetic and you want to do good for the world. You have all this altruism that you want to just have exercised in your work. Uh, but what that also does is that blurs the lines between your personal life and your professional life. And you do end up devoting a lot of yourself to your mission, to your work. And I feel it's oftentimes it gets to a point where it's unhealthy and you don't really know where you begin and the work ends. um, and I'm able to have those boundaries now, because I took a break and I was able to create something of my own. And now I can say I don't have time to expend that much energy because I have Career Safari or I have my family or I'm just tired. So I was able to define what my boundaries look like. And that has been just, I know I mean, right now it's such a hot topic, but that has been a game changer for me.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like I totally get what you're saying. I mean, I see in the therapy space and even in the coaches that I know, some of them that, yeah, to find ways to create a boundary between the helper and the home person, right, can be challenging at best and detrimental sometimes at the worst, right? The burnout, the stress, the, I don't know, re-traumatizing ourselves
Oh
potentially
yeah.
through. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just giving, giving, giving. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're doing it for a worthy cause, you justify it. And then you kind of look around and, company work has a way of reminding you you're just a worker.
It's
It has a
true.
way of reminding you that, whether you come or go you are a cog in the wheel. And
Hmm.
there's times when you're on it and you're at top and you're executing on a vision and you're excited about it. You have a leadership that believes in you, you got the resources. And then there's the other half of that where it's like you are dragging and there's conflicts happening with your team.
Mm.
Your ideas are just not being heard. You're not in the right place. And those are the times that you remember, oh, yeah, there needs to be something more outside of what I'm doing, or even in a family dynamic as well. Like you spend all this time making sure the family is operating well. And then one day everyone leaves the house.
Right?
You're like, what did I just do how did I put myself in this box?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and realizing maybe you're not operating so well
Oh,
because all
yeah.
that energy has been going outward and not enough coming in. But yeah. Um I just feel like this conversation is so potent to go in so many directions,
No.
but I do also want to value your time and energy and yourself. Um, is there a bit of wisdom that you feel like would be really important to share with the listeners today?
Yeah, and I am going to quote, not quote, but it's someone who's dear to me, Kate Johnson, and she's helped me with my strategic planning for Career Safari, and she's just a strategy genius. And I remember her saying, "It's your company. Your business plan should be full of things that bring you joy." And I had to go back and look at my business plan. I'm like, oh yeah, there's some of these things here that the idea of doing it makes me like want to go to bed.
I hear
Yeah, and there's
you.
obviously things that you have to do to keep the lights on. I'm not, I'm being, I'm balanced in this, but all that to
Mhm.
say, think about that in terms of your day. Like you should spend time on the stuff that brings you joy. Um, and if you're looking at your day or you're looking at your week or your month and you realize, you know what, I'm not spending my energy on the things that are actually bringing me joy, then I would offer it might be time to reevaluate. So for me, it was in terms of my business planning, like there's elements of it that were not bringing me joy, which told me I'm not going to have the passion to execute on it.
Mm.
And that's the piece of wisdom. I'm trying to give practical wisdom. That's the piece of
Yeah.
advice that I'm holding on to right now.
Yeah. Well, that feels really important in that I think also we tend to think of either, whether it's our business or work as like um, something we just kind of have to knuckle under and do, right? Versus like, oh, how can I do this work and find joy or experience joy too? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know for me with the podcast, I never ever would have put the podcast out there if I had to be responsible for writing the show notes and putting that. And now, of course, there's all this beautiful AI software that can do it for you. But at the time, I was like, that would stop me dead in my tracks because as much as I love to write, I do not want to regurgitate all the things we just talked about. Like I don't
No.
have the joy for that. So fortunately, my sister-in-law is an amazing copywriter and she does it for me. So there you go. And
Mhm.
that brings me joy to send it to her.
And that's my relationship with editing.
Right?
I
That
can't
too.
do this.
Oh, yeah. For a period of time, I edited it myself and I'm like, this is no fun.
No,
Yeah,
no
yeah,
fun.
and not
None.
worth the time. Not I mean, for me personally, not yeah, yeah. Well, I have so much enjoyed chatting with you and talking to you about your journey with Career Safari and just finding your way to this amazing platform to me. I mean, I just did a tiny dive into what you do, but besides the podcast and the blog, I'm assuming is still going, but I don't know
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
Yeah. How else can people sort of get to know more about you and what you do and what you offer?
Yeah, you can. We have our online community. So if you go to thecareersafari.com and subscribe, we're constantly having sessions with the women I feature. I call torchbearers.
Mm,
I'm having sessions with them where they're providing subject matter expertise, or we're hosting wellness sessions like meditation. I'm very big into that. So
love that.
please join us if you want to get involved with any of that. And of course, we're on Instagram and Twitter, and you can follow at Career Safari.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, Amita, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I appreciate your taking the time and spending it here with us.
Thank you, Viz. I really appreciate this. I did not cry. I'm proud of myself. But some of those things were touching on emotions.
Yeah, it's hard not to, right? I mean, our business is our life in many ways too,
Yeah,
right?
for
Yeah.
sure. For sure.
Yeah. Thanks again.
Thank you.